The red mist returns. They say the fog came back before the moon was full. Not the white kind that dances over rivers. This one carried color, like a slow fire beneath water. It rolled through the valley where the Cherokee once buried their warriors, whispering names that no one alive remembered. Old people said it was a warning, a sign that the spirit of the red skin had awakened again. No one could tell when the story began, only that the air changed, heavier than breath, thicker than silence. Birds stopped singing, and animals hid as if the forest itself was holding its lungs. It started with dreams. Villagers saw a man walking through the fog, face covered in crimson paint, eyes closed yet burning through the dark. He said nothing, but whoever saw him would wake the next day with red stains on their hands, stains that couldn't be washed away. Then came the voices, soft at first, like echoes inside the earth. They spoke in Cherokee, words no one remembered how to answer. Each night, the sound drew closer, like something walking behind the wind. By the time the moon turned full, no one dared go near the river. The fog had turned the water into glass, reflecting shapes that weren't there. One night, a girl, descendant of an ancient shaman line, walked down to the valley. She said she heard the spirits calling her name, and that blood remembers what time forgets. When she touched the water, it trembled. Red ripples spread across the surface, forming a circle that glowed faintly beneath her hand. In the reflection, another face appeared, painted red, eyes hollow, mouth whispering something her ears couldn't catch. The fog thickened, wrapping around her like a heartbeat. Then everything went quiet. Only the sound of the drum remained, one single beat, echoing through the woods. The memory beneath the fog. When the girl opened her eyes, she was no longer by the river. She stood inside a vast clearing surrounded by shadows, firelight flickering without warmth. In front of her, the same painted figure waited, skin the color of dry clay, lines of red running from his forehead to his chest. He didn't move, yet his presence bent the air, like gravity made of memory. She spoke in a trembling voice, asking who he was. The answer came not from his lips, but from the ground itself. "I am what your blood forgot." Visions surged through her mind, forests burning, warriors betrayed, drums echoing beneath rain. She saw the man in battle, surrounded by those he trusted. But their eyes turned away as blades rose behind him. His brothers had sold him to invaders, trading sacred land for safety that never came. When they burned his body, the smoke carried his spirit back to the soil. And there, among roots and stones, his anger grew into something eternal. Now the earth breathed it out again. The girl fell to her knees, clutching the soil, feeling it pulse under her hands. She tried to recite a prayer her grandfather once taught her, one that could calm wandering souls. But every word twisted as it left her tongue, turning into something older, raw, alive. The spirit stepped closer, and the mist followed. Shapes moved inside it, faces of the betrayed, of the forgotten, merging into one vast presence. Their whispers overlapped until they became one voice. The blood debt remains. The ground shook. The girl's heartbeat matched the rhythm of the ancient drums, echoing from nowhere and everywhere at once. She realized the fog wasn't just air, it was breath. The forest itself was exhaling centuries of silence. And deep within that silence, something had finally remembered her name. The awakening ground. By dawn, the fog hadn't lifted. It clung to the trees like skin, moving with each heartbeat of the forest. The girl woke up on damp soil, surrounded by strange markings burned into the ground, circles, spirals, symbols older than any story ever told. Her clothes smelled of smoke though there'd been no fire. Her hands glowed faintly red, and when she wiped them against the grass, the color didn't fade. She stumbled back toward the village, but the path had changed. Roots tangled across the trail, branches bent in strange angles, and every shadow seemed to watch her. When she finally reached home, the sun was already high, yet the fog never moved. Elders gathered around her. They saw the marks on her skin and fell silent. Only the oldest among them, eyes clouded like storm glass, dared to speak. He whispered that the spirit she met was the guardian of the broken oath, a warrior betrayed by his own people long ago. His death was never mourned properly. His bones were scattered in the valley, and his name erased from chance. The girl felt cold settle deep inside her. She remembered the whisper in the mist, "I am what your blood forgot." The elder nodded gravely, saying, "Then he has chosen you." That night, they gathered by the fire to restore the rite of remembrance. They painted her face with white clay, her hands with ash, her eyes with red earth. Drums echoed slowly as she stepped into the smoke, reciting words that came to her unbidden, flowing through her like something ancient had borrowed her voice. The fog began to move again, drawn toward the fire. It swirled above them, heavy, spinning faster with each heartbeat. Inside it, shapes appeared, first the warrior, then others, countless others. The betrayed, the forgotten, the unavenged. The earth trembled beneath their feet. The drums beat faster, and the fire bent toward the mist as if pulled by unseen hands. The girl's voice grew deeper, more distant, more like an echo of someone else. When she opened her eyes, her reflection shimmered in the flames, half her face human, half painted red. The drums stopped, and from within the fog came the faint sound of chanting. But it wasn't the villagers. It was something beneath them, something ancient waking from the dirt. The red spirit. For nights afterward, the village could not sleep. The fog refused to leave, wrapping each home in a suffocating silence. People began to hear footsteps along the riverbank, steady and deliberate. Sometimes they heard drumming, slow, distant, but always moving closer. They said the red spirit had returned. The warrior with painted face, walking through time as if death was only another trail to follow. Children whispered of a figure watching from the trees. Hunters claimed the forest paths rearranged themselves at night, leading them back to the valley no matter where they went. Every sound, the crack of branches, the flutter of wings, felt like breath behind the ear. The girl tried to hold the spirit back with rituals, drawing new seals around the village. But each one faded by dawn, as if the earth itself rejected her ink. Dreams came every night, visions of the warrior's death, the betrayal, the fire. In one dream, he stood before her, voice like thunder beneath water. "They took my name," he said. "Now I take theirs." When she awoke, the fog pressed against her window, whispering through the cracks. It spoke her name again and again, until she covered her ears in terror. The next morning, red handprints appeared on the door of every hut. No one claimed to have made them. The elders said it was the mark of remembrance, the spirit's way of counting his own. The girl knew then, the line between life and death had thinned too far. The fog was no longer a visitor. It was home. She stood by the river where it had all begun. The water shimmered crimson under the moonlight, reflecting her face, half alive, half claimed. And somewhere in the distance, drums began again. One heartbeat, then another, then silence. The red spirit had crossed back into the world. Blood of the earth. The fog blanketed everything. The river looked like a mirror of bone, reflecting only shadow, her shadow and his. Nothing moved except the breath between them, one of flesh, one of memory and wrath. Wind stopped. Silence grew thick, alive, pulsing like a living heart. She lifted the old drum, trying to summon the rhythm of cleansing she had learned from her grandfather. The sound came uneven, trembling, as if the air itself refused to echo. The figure stepped closer. The fog parted, revealing eyes with no color, two wells of emptiness. There was no rage in them, only something deeper, justice so ancient it no longer belonged to man or God. The girl felt its weight. Her mind tried to resist, but visions poured into her. The forest around her vanished. Suddenly, she was in the middle of war. Arrows screamed through the air, spears struck shields, and chants mixed with cries. She saw through the warrior's eyes, felt his heat, smelled the smoke, heard his heart. Then came the betrayal. His own companions turned away, stepping aside as the enemy approached. He looked back and saw familiar eyes, the council elders hidden behind the firelight. And he understood. He was captured, bound, and silenced beneath the sacred symbols that once protected him. As flames devoured the totems, the moon turned red, staining the sky with the guilt of those who watched. Then, darkness. The vision ended. She fell to her knees, breath sharp, hands trembling. The spirit still stood before her, unmoving. She understood now, it wasn't a threat. It was memory demanding voice. She whispered, "The truth will be told. The blood will rest." But the wind carried an answer, burning through her mind. Truth without sacrifice cannot heal the soil. Symbols along the riverbank began to glow. The water bubbled, releasing a metallic scent, sharp and cold. The ground throbbed beneath her, heartbeat matching the drum. She realized the seal was breaking. Power long buried was escaping, fusing past and present. Shapes took form in the mist. Men, women, children, carved from memory, walking in silence. At their center, the spirit raised a broken spear. The cycle returns. Blood answers blood, the wind whispered. The girl knew she couldn't stop it. Still, she chanted, pouring every breath into the song. But each word made the symbols blaze brighter, feeding the force instead of binding it. The drum cracked in two with a sound like thunder. The fog flared, rising high, closing the valley within a shroud. The sky turned black, thunder rolling from nowhere. She understood too late. To release was not to heal. It was to open the path for vengeance to finish its promise. Night of the promise. Far away, the village felt the first tremor as the ground quivered beneath their feet. Dogs howled. Children woke crying. The elders rushed to the central fire. The moon vanished, swallowed by a shadow that bled upward from the earth. Drums began to beat by themselves. The rhythm was that of the ancient war. People gathered in a circle, staring toward the valley. There, the red fog rose like a living column, joining earth and sky. The girl still stood inside that circle of power, her body lit from within. The spirit moved toward her, slow, heavy, inevitable. His face was no longer a man's. It was a fusion of many, countless generations merging into one. The air itself trembled when he spoke without opening his mouth. The trader's blood sleeps inside your tribe. The earth demands balance. She tried to plead, saying that the guilt of the past didn't belong to the living. The voice answered from every direction, the tone deep as the ground itself. Their children inherited forgetfulness. Forgetfulness is crime. Energy flared. The symbols on the ground spread outward, reaching roots, stones, trees. The valley shook. Totems split in half. The people fell to their knees. Within the fog, the girl raised her hands, trying to contain the storm. Her hair lifted as if caught in invisible current, eyes glowing red. For an instant, everything froze. No wind, no sound, no breath. Then, a flash of crimson lit the sky, followed by silence so complete it rang in their ears. When the light faded, the forest was still. The fog had cleared, but the air felt heavy, charged, waiting. The villagers looked around in confusion. At the valley's center, only a single stone remained, marked by a fresh red handprint. The girl was gone. Yet far beyond the trees, a red figure watched the village in silence. The elders understood her fate. She had become part of the same curse, half human, half spirit, both guardian and prisoner. Since that night, the drums have never truly stopped. In certain hours before dawn, the wind still carries faint beats, echoing through the valley, a reminder that truth always demands a price. And those who walk too close to the mist say they sometimes see her, a shape within the fog, skin painted red, eyes that have seen beyond life itself. The story became a warning, a whisper of an ancient promise no time could erase. Echoes of ash. The days that followed were strange. The sky stayed dim, caught between night and dawn. No light, no darkness, only an endless gray that felt like breath held too long. The village lived beneath the same shroud. The air was thick, unmoving. No laughter, no song. Even the birds seemed afraid to cross above. The elders tried to restore balance. They burned sage, sang old chants, and prayed to the river. But the smoke scattered before reaching the clouds, as if the sky refused to listen. Hunters returned empty-handed, seeds refused to sprout, and the ground seemed to sleep under something unseen. At night, fires flickered without wind. Footsteps echoed near the forest edge, slow, steady, never close, never far. Some nights, the faint thump of a drum pulsed through the soil, matching no heartbeat but the earth's. People whispered that the red figure still walked among them. One curious boy dared to follow the sound. He returned pale, silent, eyes wide with things he could not say. Days later, he was gone, vanished like smoke. Fear grew like rot. Families began leaving, scattering in every direction, believing distance might break the curse. But the fog followed. It found them in their dreams. Red markings appeared on trees, on rocks, sometimes even on the walls of their new homes. The last remaining elders gathered one final time. They decided to build a new seal, to bind what had been freed. In the old clearing, they drew symbols with ash and sacred bone dust, singing the words of both sorrow and plea. The wind stirred once, then fell silent. For a heartbeat, hope flickered. Then came the drums. Measured. A mist rose again, swirling above the clearing, shaping into a figure. The girl stood within it, her face calm, her hands painted red, eyes distant as moonlight. No anger, no peace, only inevitability. She gazed upon the elders. Her lips didn't move, but the wind spoke in her voice. The earth rejects lies. The cycle renews until memory is whole. The symbols glowed, then faded. One by one, their light went out, until only darkness remained. That night, the drums stopped. Only the sound of ashes moving across the ground remained, as if the wind itself mourned. Returned to the mist. Seasons passed. The map of the land changed. The forest swallowed what was left of the village, covering paths and stones until no one could tell there had ever been a home there. Travelers spoke of strange air in that valley, thick, cold, heavy as breath from the grave. They said it watched them. Some saw flickers of red light among the trees. Others heard drums beneath the soil, too slow to be human. One night, a lone wanderer lost his way. He stumbled into the clearing, where a single stone stood, marked by a handprint, red, fresh, impossibly bright. The air circled him, whispering in a tongue too old to name. He turned to leave, but the sound came, that slow, deep rhythm of the drum. The mist gathered, alive and aware. Shapes took form, faces carved from memory, eyes hollow, bodies half seen. At their center, the woman in red. Behind her, the warrior, tall, silent, waiting. The two spirits faced the wanderer. No anger, no mercy. Only purpose. She raised her hand, pointing toward the forest. The air trembled, and her voice arrived like wind through stone. Remember what was buried. He ran. Branches tore at him, shadows moved like smoke, the drumbeat following with every step. When he looked back, the clearing was gone. Only the mist remained. At dawn, he found himself outside the valley. But when he looked at his hand, he saw it. A red mark across his palm, the same as the one on the stone. Since that day, no one has camped near that forest. Those who wander too close hear whispers carried by the wind, murmuring names no living tongue remembers. And every new moon, the mist rises again, stretching over the mountains, breathing through the trees. Sometimes the drums return. Soft, distant, patient. As if the earth itself remembers. They say the spirit of the red skin never found rest. He only waits for the next name, the next voice, the next blood to forget. Because where there is forgetting, there is return. And where lies are buried, the earth always bleeds again.